Here. All right. Um, it's October 22nd, 2017. We're in the thick of AHAR. I shaved my beard. There's been choices being made, not all of them good. But we have a number of things we wanted to cover with you guys in the wake of a bunch of conferences that have happened earlier this month. Some general housekeeping things to just touch up on. Victoria's got some demonstrations to do, and then Jesus is going to close us off with some AHAR updates. But I'm going to start the webinar here. It is being recorded, and we do always have the thing open for questions, any sort of chat messages. Feel free to send us questions while we're in here, and we'll get to them as best we can. Just gonna, okay. PowerPoint. Been using this since middle school. What's going on? Okay, here we go. So it's my slide. Welcome to my slide, everyone. I wanted to start the day with a little caper talk. I know that this was briefly touched on in the Texas Homeless Network conference. I wasn't able to attend, unfortunately. I just wanted to touch base because I know that I've worked with a lot of you, specifically you and I, on caper issues. Really what I was doing was helping with navigating the eCart tool. As the tool has been removed, there's little more I can do outside of the basic, like you run the export and you'd submit it to Sage. My understanding is that you'll get the link to submit to Sage. You won't ever have a log in. So as far as like a lot of really good support I would have for you in this process, I've kind of been removed from the equation in a lot of ways. I'm obviously still here to help as I can, and I have a few ideas. I think ultimately we're going to be relying a lot more on the UDQ report as far as any sort of missing data goes. But even then, the caper, a lot of those errors that it would trigger, it wasn't necessarily missing data. It was when you were comparing data against itself within the reporting tool. Now that that tool is gone, if there's any information that was having problems reporting against itself, that would happen in Sage. And I don't really have any sort of access to that or understanding of like, you know, best practices to address it. So I just wanted to take a moment there to talk about caper real quick. If you don't know what caper is, then this doesn't apply to you, and that's all good. DV providers, again, I don't have any access to sort of, or any sort of DV database. So as far as that support is concerned, I mean, you generally have to reach out to those vendors. I've just like if we're going to use Osnium, for example, I've never logged into Osnium. I have no idea what it looks like. So I don't know if there's a whole lot I can do. By all means, I'll do my best, but sorry, I just want to take a moment to talk about caper. Next, we have the UDQ updates. I know we've gotten a handful of emails about the UDQ. I believe there was an update that went out about a half hour ago. I'm hoping that was a sync from our training database to the live database. I haven't had a chance to go in. All that to be said, the UDQ did have an issue with the disabling condition with the new data standards. Long story short, the table got moved and that report didn't get updated. So that report has been updated now, or it will be updated once we get the sync from the training database to the live. So I know we've gotten a handful of emails on that, but that should be fixed hopefully now, if not in the near future. But it is being addressed. We got it figured out. We just got to pump that through. Timeliness. One of the things in the new UDQ, the HUD one that we've been working with a little bit, it does have a timeliness section to it. It's one of those things that is part of the data quality plan that we have at HMIS, but it's also one of those things that has a real applicable use right now, just to help us stay on top of our data entry and doing so in a timely manner. There are a number of organizations where we know there's been some difficulty in staff changes and having people be available, but ultimately we need to get some data in right away. There were some check-in updates that we sent out last week. I've been rerunning some reports, and some new enrollments are still missing check-ins because they were just made last week. We're in AHAR season. Timeliness is super, super important. And we're starting to see in the database that people are doing back data entry, but it's like for a few months, so that it's back within AHAR season that we're reporting on right now and try to get our draft ready to go. So all that data has to be in there right away. To say like it should have been there, that's of course it should have been, but the real concern is that sometimes in years past, I'll be doing some reporting and data checkups, and I'll see, a created date for an enrollment being in like December, and then the enrollment starts back in June, and then we've already submitted like the AHAR, so you're not getting credit for that. If you're not putting the data in for these reports, there are deadlines that we have to submit, and so there's a level where back data entry just kind of like it's too far back. You've missed the report. You're not getting credit for the work you're doing. And that really sucks. Like that could have really helped, our statistics are showing some of the awesome stuff you guys are doing. Let's say you're doing back data entry and, you have to put in 3 people from 6 months ago that exited to a permanent housing situation. Like they had great experiences and ended well through your programs. And then you didn't get to actually show that in the AHAR to our Congress members. So, get that data in, get it in yesterday if you can, or again, not if. Hopefully, I've expressed why it's so important. Next, check-ins. Last week, some of you got check-ins. It's an important step after you enroll someone in an emergency shelter or transitional housing program that you then check them into a bed in the facility that you have in HMIS. If you have any questions on that, by all means, shoot us an email. I have been running kind of a check-in checkup to see what has been done, what hasn't been done, what still needs to be done. And so hopefully the checkups will go out by the end of today. I know Jesus may speak on this later in the AHAR, but our transitional housing is really close to being perfect or like really good. So I think we have just a handful of programs left that we need to get those transitional housing check-ins for our utilization. And the AHAR is going to be in a really great position. And I'm looking forward to that. But a lot of this is just, a step was missed. They were enrolled, they exited. We just need to go back and check them in. It's an easy fix. It's not something like a UDQ where you have to like go find the data and figure out, people's social security. Hopefully it's, very straightforward. Next, sorry, this is a long list of things I just want to touch on. And by all means, if there's any questions as we go, I haven't seen any come through, but I just want to touch base with all of you. Oh, wait, there was one. Oh, yeah. So editing enrollments, we have an update to the system that happened, as most of you are probably aware. Basically, if you have an enrollment with an exit date, at this point, the edit enrollment workflow or the edit entry workflow has been removed. You don't really have access to that anymore. So you have to go through assessments, view the master assessments, and go from there to update any assessment information. We still have a few tweaks on availability that we need to, go and double check through, but ultimately there are some changes to the system that I don't think we were super aware that was happening, and we'll recover, we'll push through, but there are still ways to edit. I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute. Once I get through the rest of the list, we'll hop back real fast and look at editing and enrollment. I clicked away. Okay. Support and contacting us. We know it's been a little difficult to get in touch sometimes. This is more of just a general reminder of there's a lot of you and only 3 of us. And right now we're all focused on the AHAR. We're all a little slammed. Earlier this month, most of the office was out at conferences. We had 2 conferences in 2 weeks, and I was holding down the fort best I could, but it was still only 3 of us now. We hope to get another person in to help us out in the HMIS department, doing more TA and just helping us be on top of our emails. But It is important to email us. If you call and we don't pick up, it's important to leave a voicemail that is descriptive. Um, it's really, from our perspective, it's super helpful to get an email or a voicemail that's like, hey, clients 12345 is triggering an error when I edit the veteran information. Awesome. Like that's a lot of information that we have that I can go to the client, that I can familiarize myself with what's going on, and maybe even see if I could trigger that error before reaching back out to you. Um, or send that information in an email. Speaking of emails, never send anything other than a client ID. Um, please reach out to us. Please let us know when you're having an issue with something. Please never tell us the name of the person or the client record you're having an issue with. Always use the client ID, whether that's in a support ticket or an email to us directly. But ultimately, we are trying to encourage you guys as our users to send us a ticket in the system, so that we have an idea of where you're at in the system, the client record you're on, maybe an error that's triggering, and we'll be able to kind of like assess through and see, okay, like, is this, are you down, or is this something that like, oh, there's a weird edit going on? Is this something that's going to take a lot of research? It kind of helps us prioritize, and keep on top of all of the work that we have to do. Because again, we are only 3 people, but in your initial contact to us via ticket or email, um, that's really a great way for us to be able to manage everything that's going on. And the more information you can give us, the better, so that we don't have to waste contacts back and forth trying to get clarifying information.
Let me just
Yeah.
interrupt you there for a minute, because yeah, it is very important. What Ben is saying is usually true, especially for times like this. We have been very immersed in reporting season, and so it's very difficult to answer. If most of the phones go straight to mail or voicemail, we try to get them in time, but sometimes what we're doing is time sensitive. So I mean, the time that we left, and I will explain a little more about this about AHAR in a minute. But yes, it is very important. Like, don't just call and call and call. If you're calling, leave a message. If you call and you didn't get through, please email us, because we will get you will get easier through us that way. Because the email, I mean, we don't have to move out away from the desk or anything. I mean, we can just figure it out. And if somebody is busy, we can pass it to the next person, and it's easier to because when I have a phone call, I mean, it's very difficult for me to transfer the call to someone else, and so the time that it takes you to get the help that you need will be considerably less if you just send us an email with the issue, or send a ticket from client track as well.
Yeah. Yeah, just from a technical standpoint, Jesus and I are both using Google Voice and working things through our computer. So sometimes if you call and like, oh, I was trying to get in touch with Victoria, like I wouldn't be able to transfer you to Victoria. Whereas an email, we would know what was going on, and we kind of divert it that way. Yeah. If you're having any specific issues with a client and trying to put them in a shelter after you enroll them, um, send us an email, or um, let us know, like, if it's like an error message, or if it's one of those things where you might not be in the right work group. Because if you're in non-shelter work group, you won't have access to the housing situation. So if it's a specific client, send us the ID and we'll try to take a look with you and see what could be triggering that issue. Real quick, I'm going to start sharing my screen because we have one of the final things on my list, the passwords, and I also wanted to show some editing stuff. So it's been a while since we've done a webinar. Um, let's see here. People can see my screen. Oh, I'm already sharing my screen, right? Because I'm doing the slideshow. Cool. I'm on it. Awesome. Awesome. It's been a long week, guys. It's AHAR season. So this is my screen. here we are looking at test data in my world with THN stuff. And the first things first, let's hop over to my test client. Now, a lot of times what we're going to be seeing now is that when you, this person's actually still checked in, but if you go to edit, you might not have the option of edit enrollment workflow. That might be taken away, and instead you see re-enter the client enrollment. That's something that I've accidentally clicked quite a few times. If you don't have the option to edit enrollment workflow anymore, what you can always do is go into your menu and select assessments. I know assessments pops out, but we don't want to click any of these. We want to click assessments. What this does is bring us to the list of master assessments. So if we're ever emailing you and you're like, oh, you have to look at the master assessments, this is what we're talking about. At the top here, it says master assessments. And these are kind of like rubber bands of assessments, and like all of the other assessments are inside that rubber band, maybe like a ball, the nebulous, I don't know. They're all contained in here. So I'd go to the entry assessment for the particular enrollment I'm needing to update, and I'd want to view the related assessments. And this shows all of the related assessments to the master assessment that you would have done in the entry workflow. You just click to edit this assessment, like the HMIS universal data. And then here you have access to the universal data assessment. So whether you need to update, some of the previous living situation or disabling condition, that's no longer on the client record, as you've probably realized. It's located here on the universal data assessment. So if anything's ever missing or you need to update, that's a really good way to go about it, is to go assessments, view related assessments, and then select the specific assessment. Just because that edit enrollment workflow has been taken away, especially for those who already have left the program, those who have an exit date. The final thing on my list, well, just to show as well real quick, if you're ever having trouble finding like the housing information on the client record, you see housing over here. If you're ever in a work group, I'm gonna drop that down. You might be in something like non-shelter programs. If I go ahead and hit apply, that housing section is just gonna go away. Frankly, not everybody has a housing program, so we don't have that available to everyone all the time, just to kind of cut down on extra menu clutter for you. But there could be a chance that you're just in the wrong work group as well. While I'm in here and thinking about it, real quick plug for anyone who wants to see additional information. We have the resources available in the live site that went live in October. We talked about it at the end of September, real quick, but we have a lot of, or all, I believe, of our tutorial videos listed in here, and also documentation, training registry. If you're an admin with a new user and you want to get some training going, you can go in here and fill this out and you're good to go. You actually want to hit save on client track. You'll want to scroll to the bottom and keep scrolling. And then you work inside Google Forms because it's kind of embedded in there. I just want to make sure everyone's still aware of that. It's a new thing that is live, and I think I haven't heard of any issues with it, but it is available. Final thing for me in my list of so many topics that I covered so quickly is passwords. And we get a lot of emails about having troubles logging in, resetting passwords, those sorts of things. And so one thing that I always think is kind of funny is that people say they're locked out. I think there's been once my entire time here that you've actually been locked out, or I've seen that. Typically, you get like 6 chances and then you're locked out for a minute. I tried to lock out someone just to kind of like show what it looked like, and I couldn't keep them locked out long enough to grab a screenshot from this end. So usually you're probably still going to be able to go and reset your password and do whatever you need to do. What I want to demonstrate real quick is for any of our admins. I feel like we've touched on it before, but it's a good thing to touch on periodically, just so you all know who has access to what. If you're a user and you're having issues with your password and you forgot it, you can't get logged in, whatever the case is, your first person of contact should be your local HMIS admin. You have someone at your organization who has access to edit this information and to update your password. So reach out to them first and let them know what's going on, and they should be able to come in here and edit your password. Admins, how you do that is to go to my client track in the home, my user configuration, and then my team. So just it expands right there to my team, and then you'll see everyone who's listed as supervisor, who has you listed as their supervisor in the system. You'll hit the blue action button, and you can select change password. You can change the password and then require password change at next login. Um, and you can set it to whatever you want per these criteria, and then your user can come in and reset it as they need. As an admin, you can see useful things like their last login. So if you have a data entry person who's like, yeah, I was in the system all day yesterday, and you log in, and the last time they logged in was like September, okay, you can adjust that as you need. You have some of that information available to you. Additionally, all of our users do have the ability to set a security question. And if you ever wanted to check on your people, you should be able to come in here, click edit, and scroll down to the bottom. And the security question is going to be there and you can't see the answer. I set this up as Victoria's starter Pokemon. We all probably don't know what that is, but it's from the original red and blue Pokemon. I forgot that was in there, to be honest. Um, but so if you are an admin and your users are asking you to reset the password a lot, you can come in here, and if they don't have this set up, it'll just be blank. Um, and then you can kind of hound them to get their security question set up. You can also see things like if there's ever a lot of missing information, it could be that people are pausing their workflows. So you can see their paused operations and see what's going on. Like maybe they came in, um, started a workflow, went to lunch, paused it, and like never came back to it. You can kind of check up on those things as well. All of this is available to our admins right here under my team in my user configuration under my client track. Um, so just a quick recap. Password resets should go to your local HMIS admin first. Whoever is listed as a supervisor, it is possible your organization might have two admins or like a backup admin. But we've tried to put the person who's most frequently in the system as the supervisor in here. And if ever that needs to be updated, if there's someone else who should be in charge of password resets, whatever the case is, by all means, let us know, and we can update that information as we need. I haven't seen a whole lot of questions come in. I know I've been kind of like flipping through some information. I had a lot of stuff I wanted to get through kind of quickly just because I didn't want to keep you all here all day. If any questions do come up, I'll be looking at the box, the questions section. But the next thing on my list were polls. And I don't know if Victoria wanted to say something about the polls or if we could just jump into them.
Yeah, so just two polls, nothing major, you guys. But we did sort of want to get a feel of how you guys feel about data dashboards. So, like Ben mentioned, we have been to two conferences, and in the past conferences that we've been in, data dashboards have been really popular. So, there are a lot of communities, a lot of states out there, even the COCs in Texas, that are using data dashboards to present their data, not just to their communities, but also just to the outside world. And that's something that we are really considering jumping on the train. Um, but we just wanted to get a feel of how you guys think about data dashboards. So, the first poll that I have is just a really basic question. How familiar are you with data dashboards? And not just with homelessness data, but like if any of you guys are interested in fantasy sports. I know my Thea is doing fantasy football right now. So she looks at her own personal data dashboard for her fantasy football team. Uh, just how do you use data dashboards in your day-to-day life, if at all? So I'll give you guys a couple of moments to answer that. can't look at the statuses right now, so I'm going to rely on Ben and Jesus to sort of gauge where we are with
We have
participation.
64% people voted.
Come
We're
on,
still
guys,
waiting for a few.
let's get to at least 70.
We're getting there. We hit 70.
All right.
Okay. 75. All right, we'll close it then.
Yeah, let's close it and let's see the results. Okay, so seems like a third of you use them occasionally. A little higher than a third are asking, what are data dashboards? That's a great question. And actually, I feel really bad now. I should have put together some examples for you guys of what data dashboards are, especially the kinds of data dashboards that we're thinking about using. And the only one that I could come up with off the top of my head was like for fantasy sports. But essentially, a data dashboard presents your data in a way that should be easy to read, and that's also accessible not just to your agency, but to your community at large and to the state at large. And you know, that audience could just keep growing and growing. Some of the examples that we have been seeing in conferences include data dashboards for things like system performance level data. So they'll take their year by year system level performance data and put that into a dashboard that's then available for the larger COC to see. Other examples would be point in time data, housing inventory count, number of beds in a certain area, how utilization rates are in certain geographic areas of a COC. I've seen that as well for data dashboards. Even something like where are your clients going, destinations, or length of stay. So just thinking about the data that you input in the system every day on an aggregate level. So not really looking at a client by client basis, but looking at just a larger picture of what your data is saying. And that's what we sort of mean when we're talking about data dashboards. If you have any further questions about what those are, please feel free to put them in the chat box. And that actually brings me into the second poll question, which is what would you guys, if we're going to make a data dashboard, what would you guys expect to see or think would be useful on that dashboard? So I've already gone over some examples that you're also going to see in the poll. It is a multiple choice selection. You can select more than one. But if there's something that you don't see on this poll that you think would be useful to have on a data dashboard, go ahead and write it in the chat box, because we are really interested in knowing what you guys would like to see, what you would think would be helpful, right? If we're going to put this out there, we want you guys to use it. So on that note, let's go ahead and run the second poll. So again, what would you like to see in a data dashboard for our COC? Some of the examples I put in here: client destinations, system performance measures, point in time and housing inventory count, length of stay, service data. And again, you can check off as many as you like, or if none of these seem to appeal to you, you can always write in a chat your suggestion. And Ben and Jesus, if you have anything additional to say about data dashboards, please feel free to jump in. If you don't, that's fine. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I'm like, I was not prepared for this. But no, I mean, it is something that we have been discussing for a long time. It is a very useful way to present your information. Of course, if your data is great, then you have something to show, right? But it also, I mean, for other agencies where data is not not at that level where they want to be yet, this also can help them see it, because then you have to see it, and seeing it on a daily basis kind of makes you wonder, well, what am I doing wrong? What can we change? And so I feel like, okay, it can help not just to give a more accurate representation. And also, I mean, that's where everything is pointing out now. We have the numbers, we have the data, you guys have the data is yours. So now we have to know how to utilize that data to benefit your organization further. And so a dashboard will be like the next possible or the best step to move as of now. Um, and right now we have 63%. So I don't know, and it's kind of moving from there. People are thinking about it.
Okay.
Um, and again, there could be other things. There could be other things that are not in this list. And if you have any other ideas, what would you like to see? Send us a note either on the chat or on a question, and we'll consider them. So, okay, we got 68%. I guess we're going to close it now.
Okay. All right. So lots of these pretty popular. I am not surprised as the system performance measures are not as popular. I kind of expected that. So, okay. This is really great. And I also want to point out that, we're going to take this information and we'll, make a draft of a dashboard, right? When I think of dashboards, I think of um, data that's being not constantly changing. Some of the dashboards that we've looked at, is on, they're only updated a few times a year. So keep that in mind. But also the idea that the dashboard that we put out will not be static, right? So we're going to expect that the first dashboard will not be perfect. And so we would just expect some community feedback, right? We're going to present the dashboard given the initial feedback that we get from this poll, as well as any other suggestions that may come in later. We're going to be working with our Texas Balance of State COC department and see what they think would be great for a dashboard. And then once it's kind of out in the world, we're just going to see what you guys have to say about it and how useful you think it is. And we will probably be consistently updating it based on what we see a need for. So thank you guys for this participation. We really appreciate it, and we will hopefully be putting this into a dashboard very soon. And I think that wraps up our dashboard polls here. Um, so the next part is for my RHY people. So for runaway homeless youth, that export is going to come up for you guys in November. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to run through how to do the export one more time. So if Ben or someone could flip me the screen.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yes, I can do that. Let's
Mm.
see.
Okay, there's my screen. Oh man, it kicked me out of client track. Lovely. Because I waited too long. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so let's talk about the actual exports. So in the past, you probably ran export 5.1. Now you are going to be running export 6.1. So I'm going to show you where that is located. You're going to click on HMIS reports. This will be in the home workspace. So right when you log on to Client Track, it's the first workspace that you get dropped off on. You're going to hover over HUD/HMIS reports and you get that little pop-out menu. At the top, we have a folder that says exports. And we have two different kind of folders here for CSV 5.1 and 6.1. If you hover over 6.1, you should see another little pop-up. It's like those little Russian nesting dolls where you just kind of like have pop-up after pop-up. But you should see the HMIS RHY export CSV 6.1. I'm going to click on that. Let me hide that so we get a little bit more room here. So the export is a little bit more involved than it has been in past iterations of the export. You'll have to select a source endpoint. You should already see your RHY agency in here. If you don't, please let us know and I will set you guys up. Right now I'm just going to click on this test endpoint. This is what I use for any test exports that I do for Texas Homeless Network. For the source type, you will select Continuum Operated HMIS. You'll need to select your state filter, which for us is Texas, and then you have Texas balance of state COC, and these are required. You won't be able to move on with the export until you have those filled out. For the export date range, I'm just going to do the traditional October 1st through September 30th. You will want to double check your grants just to make sure that that is also your export date. Your organization should already be selected for you. Texas Homeless Network is already selected for us. And then in the program filter box, you'll click on that checkbox there, and then you'll select the RHY program that you're doing the export for. It's my understanding that you will have one export for each RHY program that you have. So if you have a transitional living program and a maternity group home program, those will be separate exports. You'll have two. If you have Basic Center Emergency Shelter and Basic Center Homelessness Prevention, again, that is two exports that you will want to run. I'm just going to click on Basic Center Program for this example and then run the export. So there are two different options that you have here when you click on that Run Export. You can do encryption. What this means is that you just basically set a password on your export, and no one else can get into that export unless they have your password. It can be your client track password, or it can be something totally different, something that you make up on the fly. So this is really important, I think, if you are using a computer that is not your work computer, right? If you're using a computer that several people are on during the day, and you are kind of hesitant, about your data safety. What I usually do, though, especially when I'm just doing test data, I don't encrypt, but that it then asks you to click on this additional checkbox. I assume the full responsibility of ensuring the security of the exported files. That's still the case even if you choose the encrypt export option. But what I like about this, when you don't encrypt the export, what actually downloads is the zip file. If you instead choose to encrypt the export, you don't get the zip right away. What you get is a .exe file. And that's something a little different. There's some extra additional steps that you would take to actually pull out that data. Instead, I'm going to go, just for this example, with the regular zip file option. I'm going to click on Done. Client track is going to let you know that your export has been queued. And it should take you to your files on server page. Now, I did this beforehand earlier in the morning, so you'll see what I mean if I had, when I went with the encrypt export option. What downloads instead is this .exe, and that's a small executable file. Basically, it just kind of runs a tiny program, and then it asks you for your password that you use to encrypt the file. You just put in that password, and then you get the zip. Again, I think that's important if you're using a computer that's not really yours, or your own work computer, and other people are using it. I will say that there have been issues. If you have like Windows Defender on your computer, or another sort of I was going to say an adware blocker, but it's not really an adware blocker. If you have that kind of you know limitation in place on your computer, you might have problems with the .exe, and so you might end up having to do or skip the encrypt option, so you just get the zip file. And just to let you guys know, you can find files on server here under HMIS reports, or also under my saved reports. You have files on server. So this made it look like it happened really fast. It does not happen very fast. This is kind of my plug for you guys to run this early. If you need to run it, or if you need to have it by noon, you want to make sure that you run it at least by like 8 or 9. The exports can take a very long time to run, hours sometimes. And it especially can get clogged, or the system can get clogged, if we have a lot of people trying to run exports at the same time. So do not wait when it comes to your exports. The export period starts November 1st. So you guys want to start thinking about getting your data corrected and exporting as soon as possible. Just to let you guys get a sense, if you're not familiar with what the export looks like, I'm going to download this zip file. And you should have 13 CSV files in that export. 13. This zip itself is what you upload into RhyPoint. And I want to reiterate that we do not have access to RhyPoint. If you need a password or a login for RhyPoint, you need to get in touch with RhyTech, or the technical assistance desk for RhyPoint, because we unfortunately can't give that information to you. We don't have access to it. We can put you in touch with someone who will probably be able to help, but unfortunately we don't have access to that. So kind of like with Osnium, our hands are a bit tied in terms of the amount of support we can do after that export is done. Are there any questions regarding the export itself? Anything that you guys would like me to go back over? I also have a video of this process. I'll need to update it because the video is still for export 5.1, but the steps are essentially the same. You would just need to do the export 6.1 instead. I see that someone might have their hand raised, or maybe a question.
I don't know. Probably. No questions?
No questions?
Does that mean it's my turn?
That means it's your turn. Let me go ahead and switch it over to you.
The next part, the last part of this webinar is brought to you by kitties.
Aww. Aww.
By kitties. I can talk while I feel like a Bond villain over here because I'm going to be talking AHR. Let me show my screen first. Now, one thing that I wanted to touch based on, and let me know if you can see my screen right now. You can see this is client track, right? Mm-hmm. It's client track. Okay. Two things, because sometimes I hear about people having issues finding stuff, and especially when we give the options like, okay, go to home, go to reports, go to find it there. I just want to remind everybody that we have the search option, and I use it a lot because, I mean, I'm lazy, and you guys should also use it. For example, if you're looking for the right report, just write right in there, and then you have it over there, either which one you want. The same with any other report or with any other function. Now, one thing that I want to stress is do not use this search bar to search for clients, because that's not what it's there for. But you can search and find your reports. And for example, if you run that Rhy report or the path report, or if you have your favorite report, just remember that you can have them in your favorites. Like you see here, this icons on the side. All I have to do is come here. Well, my computer is kind of slow. And click here, add to favorites. Just click save, and now I have it over here. See, so it's always going to be there when you need it. And those kind of things, I mean, will make your life way easier. So you don't have to go and through the motions again. Just keep it in mind. I didn't want to distract myself with too much, but I thought that that was a good point in case if somebody has issues finding the right report. Okay, the other thing before I go into AHR is another question that I get a lot. When we're asking for check-ins, for example, you have your emergency shelters. I have here, this is my this is actually the name of my dog. Okay, so it's an example. It's not a real client. We have this client that is enrolled and it's already exited, right? And that's it. But if I go and check the housing inventory or like the housing, the check-in history, she doesn't have that check-in in there. So pretty much what happens in here is that, yes, when you run your reports, you're going to see all of the clients that you serve, and that's great. But you also need to remember that if you have a shelter, a transitional or a emergency shelter or a permanent supported housing, you have beds, and those beds are available. Those beds are the beds that you report to the housing inventory to HUD, and so they are expecting those beds to be utilized. And the issue is that if you don't check the clients into the beds, those clients are not going to be, I mean, they're counting for your reports, they're enrolled, but your housing utilization is going to go down because technically you have, like in this case, this is our shelter for Texas Homeless Network, which we don't have, it's a fake one, but we have 26 beds in there that no one is using. And that's how the report will show. So that's why it's very, very important that if you have a shelter, you have to use it because it's not there just uh, it's really funny. I mean, I go in there and I love designing these things, the rooms, because you can put the beds, you can put the cribs, you can, I don't know. I remember when I was being trained on this. I mean, you even have those birds, right, that pass in there and say, hey, you know that you can shot these birds? I mean, that you don't go and shut the birds, okay? But I mean, you can do that if you want to. But okay, they're there not just for you to have a reference or to go and see them. They're there because you have to put people into beds. That's the second part. Once you complete your workflow, this is the other part that has to be uh, done. And in this case, for example, I have this client. I'm going to go back to show you. It's again, this client is already exited. And when you go, okay, well, I was already there. I should have. Okay, if you go to shelter and you go and try to enter the client into the shelter through the shelter workspace, you can, but you have to search for your client again. And if you have duplicates, well, that will make it a little complicated. So what I suggest is always do it through here. You have your housing, and you come here to check in. Just click on check in and decide where you want this client. My computer right now is actually really slow. I had an issue with my computer and I ruined it. So this is temporary one, so bear with me. But as you can see, the client is already there. Now, as you know, enrollment is a required field. And if I click in there, there's nothing. You're like, well, I can't enroll the client. He's not there. Well, and he's not there because if you check the date, this date is today's date. And I don't know if you observe enough to know that that client was there until April. So what happens then? All you have to do is change this date. If you don't remember the dates, I mean, you should always like write them down. I write them down. But in this case, I don't remember exactly what was the entry date. So I'm just gonna, I know that the client exit in April. So I'm gonna put here March. And once I put March, it's in the range. So it will show me here the enrollment. And once you have the enrollment, you can see in there that you have the entry and the exit date. So those are the dates that you use. Well, actually, in this case, well, we'll use the 10/26, 2016. And okay, well, I need to put the client. Well, bear with me because this is a fake thing, so we don't even have a thing in here, of course. I'm gonna try and put them here. Just all right in that room. Client is gonna be floating, but I don't have an enrollment, so it's not gonna work.
Actually,
Anyways,
I have something because this actually came up earlier. So you'll see that there's just the check-in date, and Jesus was like, "Where's the checkout date?" You guys should be able to see the checkout date field on your end, and if you don't, you should let us know. The reason why it's not showing on this page is because one, it's in the training site, and so we have a 1 day checkout period for our training clients, so that they automatically check out within a day because it's the training site. And we don't really care. But like in the live site, we do not have that for the majority of our facilities. So if you don't see the checkout date, you probably should, and let us know, and we'll make sure that your facility setup is correct.
so in here, what you will enter is the entry date and the exit date. and then you will have the option to check decline. Again, in this case, will not work because this is a fake shelter. You should not have this issue. But I'm just telling you like how you can take care of that issue. Because yes, if you put in here a date that is outside the range when that this client was actually in the shelter, you're not going to see that enrollment, and then that's going to stop you, and you're going to be like, what's going on? Something is wrong here, and it's just that date. Once you change that date, it'll show you the enrollment. Okay, so that was the end of that rant because it is important. This brings me actually to the next thing that I wanted to discuss, AHAR. And as you know, the AHAR is the annual homeless assessment report, and every year we have this issue. Every year we have this report. Before I go into what's happening right now, I wanted to tell you. Actually, I wanted to show like a little history here with the AHAR because I thought it was really important. I hope, of course, it exited me. All right, let me go back in. Hopefully, all of the things that I had saved in there are still there. If not, I'm gonna be really, really mad. But whatever. Let's see. Hopefully. Come on, come on. No, of course not. Okay, I had everything prepared, but this is time sensitive. So if I'm idling too much, it's the government. I mean, they will shut me down. All right. So let me just go back in here and show you something, just so you get an idea, because I have been working with AHAR since 2014. You guys have been working. If you have been working with service providers before that, I mean, you probably know about this way before then. But this is something that I wanted to show you because this is 2013, for example. And as you can see in here, we have emergency shelter for families and individuals, transitional housing for family and individuals, permanent supported housing for family and individuals, and then a summary. In here, you can see which shells were considered usable. And that means because the data was okay, there was not a lot of errors, there were not a lot of warnings. There was, I mean, it was enough for it to be deemed usable. So this is 2013, and you can see emergency shelter for individuals. We were not able to use it. They deemed that no, this is unusable. Your data is bad. The same happened with transitional housing individuals. The rest of them were usable. And then again, we had to submit all of this again just for veterans, and we have all of that data issues in there as well. So we were like, okay, well, that's not good enough. We need to do better, right? And we started doing more the data quality reports, starting like doing a little more involved with the agencies. This is 2014. Actually, this was actually the first year that I was fully from the beginning till the end working with this. And still, as you can see, we have the errors, the warnings in there. Emergency for families was not usable. The same with emergency individuals, not usable. The only ones that were usable that year were transitional for family, PSH for family, and PSH for individuals. I gotta say that PSH, permanent supported housing, has consistently have the best data. And again, I mean, I want to thank everyone that has been really hands-on with your data for the past years. Although, I mean, just to be honest, I mean, permanent supported housing has a little advantage because those clients are there for longer. And so if there's any issues or with the data, missing information, you can always know where they are and you can get a hold of them. That's not the case so much in transitional and emergency shelters. So again, that's why we insist, just stay on top of it. That was 2014. Then we had 2015. We were still like, okay, trying to gather more information to try to do this process better. We got emergency shelter, family and individuals usable, transitional family. We didn't with transitional for individuals. That was really low. And again, the summary was not accepted as well. We continue, right? We persisted. We went back to the board and we're like, okay, determined, like, okay, we have to make sure that this actually works. And again, you guys notice we were a little more strict with the data. We were a little more strict with the trainings, and we started the webinar. Well, actually, the webinar started this year, but like the ideas that you're seeing this year started then. And this was actually, I told you, if you guys attended the last conference that we had in Dallas, this was the first year where everything was usable. And I mean, I couldn't even believe it because I've seen like before. And again, the first time in the COC's history that all of the shells were usable, I was really excited again because I do this. But I was really, really excited because you guys also do this. And so again, it pays off. You can see that there's some warnings in there. Those warnings are utilization. Utilization is down consistently in emergency shelters. It happens. I know. I mean, it is, there's a very high turnover. And by the time you try to get a lot of more information, the client is no longer there. But one thing that you can make sure that you always do whenever you enroll a client, just make sure that that client is put into a bed, because that's what counts. Okay. Uh, this year, after last year that everything was usable, but you can still see like you had the 5 warnings in there. Emergency for individuals, 5 warnings, 1 warning, 1 warning, and so that was the final submission. Just bear in mind it was useful, but that was the final submission even with the warnings. Now this is what we have this year. There's no warnings in PSH. We're great there. Transitional individuals, no warnings, no errors. Transitional family, we have 2 warnings. And this is, again, we have been emailing you guys, and a lot of you have been really, really helpful. And then there's others that we can't get a hold of sometimes, and it makes things difficult. Like, for example, one of those warnings is for utilization. That's what we kept insisting, like, check your clients in, check your clients in. We are going to run some more reports and see which of the transitional housing projects can help us with this. We have to run some queries to see enrollments and to see which ones don't have the check-in, so we can send them to you, and then you guys can add some more, and then we can get there. Because believe me, I want to try to go inside in here if it's possible, because you guys don't get to see this very much. I have lived my life in the past 2 weeks here, and so I mean it's thrilling, but at the same time it's hard, it's nerve-wracking. So as you can see in here, this is it. It's utilization. We hit them on these 3 dates, but on these dates we're still low. If we hit this one, we will hit this one because this is covered at any time. So if we hit this one, and I'm guessing that we're not that far behind, maybe like 30 to 50 enrollments, check-ins, sorry, and that will get fixed. Now, the other one is just, and again, I want to reiterate this because it's very, very important, and it really messes up the count. I don't know if it's here. No, it's probably not even here. No, it wasn't in the emergency shelter. The other one is, it was those 2. Those are the 2 warnings for that. Emergency shelter, these 5 warnings are utilization. We're low. We need still check-ins in there. And again, we have sent some. You guys have worked. And one of the other things that I wanted to make sure it goes through is that we notice mistakes, right? There's a lot of mistakes that happen, and they're normal. I mean, you're doing data entry, and the family gets separated, and then it's very difficult to know until somebody points it out, because you don't get to go back and see it. But this is the other thing that I want. Well, that was the utilization. That was one of the warnings that we had for emergency. But look, this one, for example, we're talking here. This is an emergency shelter for individuals. What it's telling me here is that we report 1 person under the age of 1 in an emergency shelter for singles, which, I mean, it's definitely a mistake. It could be one of 2 things. The date of birth is incorrect. And I think Ben pointed this out because the date of birth, I think, was very similar to the entry date. So it could have been that was just a typo there. But again, that's a warning. The other thing that could be is that if you have a family and you exit the family and you leave one of the kids in there, well, for a period of time, even if you exit that kid following a day after, for a day, it'll show that you had one client, one unaccompanied youth in your shelter for one day alone. And again, it's possible, but we need to have those justifications. I mean, it's possible because maybe the I don't know. I mean, all sort of things happen, right? Probably the parents were taken. The kid went to what is it called? The other one, CPS. Yes, and it happens, right? But again, we have to justify it, and in this case, it just looks like a mistake. So that's the other warning. Once we clean that one, we won't have any warnings in there. All we have to worry about is those utilization rates. And again, I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to check your clients in those beds so they appear like they're being useful. Um, Next year we're going to be doing all sorts of things because one of the good news that I had for you is that next year there is not going to be new data standards. We will continue working with the data standards that we have right now, the ones that just started in October. Those data standards are going to continue for the next year, and we're going to be great. No data standards changes. However, there are going to be changes in the AHAR, and I I'm a little torn in there because it is going to make things somehow easier in the long run, but while we get there, it's going to complicate things a little bit, and that's why it is very important that one, we fix these issues right now with utilization. We start the next year hitting those goals from the get-go. Remember, the AHAR starts, I mean, the next AHAR, it already started in October 1st of this year. So we need to hit those goals from now. Every client, and we're going to try, and again, we're going to have another session before the end of the year. It's not going to be probably the last of next month because Thanksgiving is on the way. It's not going to be on the last of December because, well, you know, the holidays. So we're going to have to find an alternative date because I do want us to get together, and I'm going to get together with the team, but I want you guys also in there because I want us to talk about what will be the best approach in the future. If we're doing these things right, if there's things that we can do better, how can we help you hit those goals better? I mean, maybe we need to teach you how to run a check-in report or stuff like that. I mean, those are the kind of things that I'm really interested in hitting right now because as I'm showing you this is this year's AHAR, and this is the best AHAR I've seen. Again, don't mind those warnings because those warnings, we're going to hit them. We're going to hit those goals. But let me remind you this is still a draft. We're still on the draft. Previous submissions, this was the last submission. This, I mean, not even as good. And so that has me really thrilled for the future because I feel like this team that I have working with me is great. You guys on the other side of the screen have been doing amazing work, and I want to see how we can help you even like make this easier for you guys. I'm always looking for can we make things easier. And these guys can tell you we discuss a lot of things, but I do want to include you guys on the other side in this discussion as well, because next year is going to be intense, and we need to have all hands on deck. And the more you guys know, the better equipped you'll be, and the better we will be able to help you as well. But we have to make those decisions as a team. So again, just pay attention. We're gonna be sending some more information, some more emails. The data is good. It's not great. It's good, but it's way better than it has been other years. And again, this is in a lot, a great deal, thanks to you, thanks to all of the work that you have been putting into this. Thanks for the care that you have when you're entering this date. I mean, I know it's complicated, but we want to make sure that because at the end of the day, the AHAR, as the HIC, as the point in time, and as the system performance measures, I mean, those are just snapshots of your agency, of the entire COC. And so if one of you is not looking great, the COC is not looking great either. So we want to make sure that the COC looks great. But in order to do that, we have to make sure that you guys are doing and looking great as well. So again, just be on the lookout. We're gonna be sending some emails, and if you get those emails, please, 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 let's put that as a priority, and let's make sure that this is the best AHAR that we submit. Period. In the history of this, and then I don't know what we're gonna do next year, but we have a full year right now to concentrate on what we on how great the other one is going to be. But okay, the other last thing before I leave you, because I think I'm over time now, is next year. Yes, it's going to be a little more intense. I think rapid rehousing is going to, for the first time, make an appearance on AHAR. And so that has me in, again, thorn, because it's going to be the first year for them to participate in here. And so that means that we're going to have two, four extra shells now. So it's going to be intense. That means that if you're, for example, providing SSBF, and you have your rapid rehousing projects, you guys are going to be participating in AHAR too. I don't really have a lot of worry with SSBF programs because you guys report monthly, so you pretty much are on top of the curve. But still going to be a learning curve for everybody. And the other thing is that it's not going to be manual like it has been. I mean, if you guys have used eSnaps, for example, I mean, you used to enter everything manually. That's up to this year how the AHAR has been. Next year, everything will come out of HMIS, which means that everything has to be perfect because there's no way that we can change anything. There's no way. The HIC has to be spotless. The point in time has to be great. And again, the point in time is not done in HMIS, but some of the data, some of the dates appear in HMIS. So we actually account for the shelter population during the point in time. And so I'm excited. I'm a little worried, but again, seeing these numbers as I'm seeing them right now, I have a little faith that we're gonna be okay. But we're still not where I want us to be, but we're on that route. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them over here. If not, well, I don't have anything else. If you guys see any questions.
Nope, I was oh, we have someone just one just came in. Do we check youth into beds for the homelessness prevention program? Bed check-ins for only shelter programs, so like emergency shelter, transitional housing. So a homelessness prevention program wouldn't have a facility to check them into.
Good question.
No. The only, yes, good question. The only ones that participate in AHAR are emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing. And as you can see, they're divided. That's why one of the questions that we asked during the HIC is whether you have beds that are dedicated for adults, or you have beds that are dedicated for households with children, or households with only children, for those that are youth services providers, because those have to be counted separately. But yes, no homelessness prevention, no services only programs,
No
no
street
day
outreach.
shelters, no street outreach, um, only emergency shelter, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, and starting next year, rapid rehousing.
What else?
That was it. A lot of the other stuff, we were just pinging back and forth about some issues. So I think we'll be reaching out to some people via email after the webinar.
Yeah, and again, I do want to stress how grateful I am for all the help that you guys have provided coming forward. Because actually, this didn't look like this. This is what you're seeing right now in your screen. Um, we have been working for a couple of weeks. You guys have received those emails. You have been working on those emails. We had like uh, a couple of errors here and there, some warnings on other shells, but we have been working on those little by little, and those issues have been corrected. Oh, the other thing is that, for example, yeah, like I was saying, like sometimes when I send you an email and say like, hey, this client, for example, needs to be checked in into a bed, and I'm sending them because I'm like, okay, they due to the range of that client, I can see how it's going to affect positively in the AHAR, right? And then you somebody will receive that and say, oh, actually that client exited like 3 months ago, so let's exit it before. And then that number goes down, and I don't even able to count it. So things fluctuate constantly. And the thing is that, as you can see at the end, we have a summary, and that summary has to match with a lot of the data that you have in the transitional housings in the emergency shelters. Pretty much ask like what clients has stayed in an emergency shelter for families, but also in a transitional shelter for families, or what client has stayed in a transitional for individuals, but also in an ES for it makes a lot of different calculations. And so issues that we have found is duplication. Yeah, duplication of files. I mean, there's a lot of duplicates sometimes. That messes up the data as well. But in order for it to match, like all of the other categories have to match. So if I'm running one, for example, if I'm running emergency shelter, and by the time I finish with the summary, the information on the emergency shelter has already changed because of the corrections and whatever. So it just messes up everything so easily. And I'm constantly seeing increases and down and decreases. But again, I think that everything that we have going right now points in the right direction. I'm really, really excited. And these warnings, this that error that we saw there, I think it's going to be corrected before Friday. And just again, be on the lookout. We're gonna send some emails, and whenever you receive those emails, just check those clients into beds, and then we'll be golden.
We had some more questions come in. One of them is asking, when we're talking about different programs in the AHAR, there's a question about the HUD VASH program. I don't think we have any HUD VAShes in this
Not in
system,
HMIS,
like
no.
in our COC.
No.
Yeah. Okay. There's another question that came in. One of our shelters has had a couple service dogs, and there's a question about whether or not we record that kind of information in HMIS.
That's a good
My
question.
gut is no,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't create a client record for the dog. Well, just because then
Yeah.
we'll be counting them as like a human client, and
Yeah.
so um,
I guess if you, I'm not sure if there would be any justification for that.
yeah,
Unless you count it as a service, like if your agency has service dogs, or service cats, service animals,
yeah,
and you want to track that, you can maybe have it as a service. But if the service animal belongs to the client, I don't think there's any way to like indicate that, maybe in a case note, but
yeah. I mean, obviously, I think it's good to make sure that there's space for that service animal. I think if it's the client's dog and if you're providing like food for the dog, like dog food or something,
yeah,
we can make a service for
service
that,
for that.
and you can count like how much money went to that. Is there an alternative report for the data quality report? No, we've taken them away because there was an older one that was not updated. It wasn't going to be updated, and there were a lot of issues with it. And so there's just the one UDQ. Anything else is not going to be updated with the current data standards. Even this one isn't like fully updated, or I haven't checked. It might have updated today, and it should update soon. But any of the other ones, they're not going to update. There were potential alternatives in the AHAR. The paper AHAR did have an option where you can view data quality and export that and use it in that way. However, again, that's not going to be updated because the AHAR is moving to an export situation. I think to go down a real quick rabbit trail, HMIS systems as the whole, like in the industry, seem to be moving towards exports. I bet you've all felt it because you've all sat and waited for an export, as have I. Getting really familiar with the UDQ, the HUD report and export is going to be crucial in addressing data issues, because a lot of those old paper reports that would have an option of exporting or tunneling through, they're just not going to get updated because HUD's not going to mandate that the HMIS vendor updates. And for us to make those updates happen, we'd have to pay client track, do all these sorts of different hoops and jumps. And so I just have a feeling that exports are the way of the future, for better or for worse. And the HUD data quality is the one that's we're using.
Yes, I have a video, guys, of how to run the APR ESG DQ export, and that export lines up with the HUD data quality report. So if you notice
Mhm.
that there are some errors pinging in Q2 of the HUD data export, or not, excuse me, the HUD data report, you would run the APR ESG DQ exports, and you would look specifically at the Q2 CSV file to see where those issues might be cropping up. Um, yeah, it's not. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
guys. It's like that's just the way it's moving towards. So we're just gonna have to do it. It's just gonna have to. It's just gonna have to be the way it is.
Here's one of the things
I'm not happy
that
about it
I
either,
think.
but so.
No, yeah, one of the things that I think will help a lot, and again, I have been talking a lot about like how we have to all get in better into reading data, using data, understanding the value of data. And one of the things that when I was in that last conference that I went, I met with other HMIS provider, HMIS administrators, and they were saying, well, we're working on a fix on that APR, on not APR, none of the APR, the data quality. I mean, because they wanted to make it easier to, I mean, they want to crack it pretty much. And that's something that we can go into it as well. Like that's stuff that we want to do, but seriously, there's no time because as you
Mhm.
know, I mean, this is the team, right? And we serve the whole balance of state, and we're constantly like doing, well, you know, little things that we keep saying. That's why, I mean, in part, you guys have noticed we have put a lot of stuff back in responsibilities back onto the HMIS admins and stuff like that, because we need to have that time to actually go into the system and fix a lot of issues that we know we can, but there's really no time. We have moved from report to report, and I think one of the other things, I mean, next year there was talks about maybe having combining HIC, PIT, and system performance measures. I mean, I don't even want to go into that right now, but what I'm saying is like, as is, I want us to what is the word I'm looking for? Tame the AHAR, tame the other reports, and the only way that we can do those things is by making sure that our data quality is spotless, and then we can proceed to create better reports, to create more functionality, to create better tools for you guys to use. But until then, like we have to continue working as this. I mean, yes, I hope that next year will bring us an extra HMIS hand. Hopefully attached to a body. But yeah, I mean, like, that way
Just disembodied hand.
we can not just a hand. Uh, well, we'll contract Katniss over here, but I don't have anything else, guys. Again, stay tuned because we're going to have one last session. It's not going to be in November. I think it's going to be between the first days of December, maybe, just so we can have the Thanksgiving in peace. We want to have AHAR final submission. So, but I do want us to meet, and I want you guys to pass the voice. Tell everybody, like every HMIS user in your agency, hey, let's get together to this one last session because I want to bring some. I want to bring some questions. I want to bring some ideas, and I guess whoever is here is going to decide
We'll have a
how this
pizza
is going to
party.
go.
You guys order
So
pizza, we'll order pizza. We'll just have like a pizza party last webinar.
I can't have a pizza for everybody. I would love to, but yes, if everybody can have their pizza, I mean, yes, we'll have something. Thank you very much. This has been amazing, and that's it. I don't have anything
Yeah.
else.
Any other questions come in?
Not that I've seen come in.
All right. Thanks for
Oh,
joining. Oh,
are we going to keep the HMIS webinars every month? Yeah, I think we're going to keep on that. It's just like the next couple months with the holiday stuff gets a little tricky.
yeah.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's one of the things that we wanted to ask. I mean,
The
we'll have some polls. It's,
the
I
webinars are
promise
more
you,
popular
it's
than I
going
thought
to
they'd
be
be.
less information and more fun in a way that, I mean, there's gonna be polls, there's gonna be questions, it's gonna be. I want you guys. I want to hear your feedback. So please be there.
All right.
Mm, cool.
All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. See y'all
Thanks.
later.